back, just go on alone. Some men lack the daring ever to be free. They shun the heights and crowd the depths and court security. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Cowards see but pride in singularity. Oh, never mind if men are wrong, so long as they agree. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Claim the power within you, error to defy. The world may change or disappear, but truth can never die. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone.
Well, good morning again, and my name is Nayaswami Devaki, and I have with me Dr. Michelle. And to those of you online, if you understand me, welcome. Apparently you do, because I got a thumbs up, so we're happy to have you as well. So this is from the Rays of the One Light with weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, and this is by Swami Kriya-yoga. Does Satan exist? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Bible tells us in chapter 4 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, then after baptism was Jesus led up of spirit up into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. To most modern minds, this passage seems quaintly obsolete. Psychologists would say, and have said, in fact, that the temptation of Jesus, if it occurred at all, was purely psychological. They call it a projection of desires lurking in his own subconscious mind. The subconscious plays a strong part, certainly, even if not a unique one, in any testing the spiritual seeker must undergo. The Bhagavad Gita, in dealing with this undeniable reality, quotes Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, and then Sri Krishna's reply. Yet tell me, teacher, said Arjuna, by what force doth man go to his ill, unwilling, as if one pushed him in that path? And Krishna replied, desire it is, passion it is, born of the darknesses, which pusheth him. Mighty of appetite, sinful and strong in this, man's enemy. Yet even Krishna describes passion as born of the darkness. The fact is, as Paramhansa Yogananda wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, all thoughts vibrate eternally in the cosmos. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. Psychology, yes, but psychology attuned to currents of consciousness that pervade the entire universe, attracted by each of us according to our own personal inclinations. Yogananda quoted in the Path saying, I used to think Satan was only a human invention, but now I know, and add my testimony to that of others who lived before me, that Satan is a reality. He is a universal conscious force whose sole aim is to keep all beings bound to the wheel of delusion. And we should take pains then to attract uplifting currents of universal consciousness and to avoid attracting the negative, which, disease that it is, can infect our thoughts even while it leads us to believe that our thoughts are purely our own. And thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Many of you know that I do events for the church, and for many years I directed a play called The Peace Treaty at Ananda, written by Swami Kriya-yoga. And several years ago, when I was directing, let me first preface this by saying the Peace Treaty is a 3-act play, and there's 22 actors in it. And many of the people that are in it are not actors, so to speak. They're community members. But there was a weekend that Swami Kriya-yoga decided that we would take the Peace Treaty to town and perform it in a local theater. Now, when you take something outside of where you've been performing for a while and you move it someplace else, of course, you can imagine it's disorienting for people, and there's a whole process that has to happen. And you're also just given a limited amount of time in which to do it, because you're paying to be able to get into the theater and do what you need to do and then perform it that night. You're paying for all of that. So you try to be relatively conservative when you do that. And so there's a lot involved in moving something, especially something that big. But Swami Kriya-yoga decided that particular weekend that we would also do an evening of enchantment. Now, an evening of enchantment is very much like when we do the big donor dinner here. It's a big deal, and everyone is kind of called to rally around it. But at the village, which is where I was living, at the village, you usually have about 150 people as opposed to 30 people, and you're trying to organize this big event, which required we rented tablecloths, we rented china, we rented silverware. It was a big deal. We had all the cooks come on board who had to prepare this wonderful feast and this meal for everybody. And, you have servers and you have people leading the servers. It's quite, and then there's entertainment. So at that time, I won't say we had as many people as we have today that were able to serve the work. So what happened was a lot of the people that were involved in the play were also involved in the evening of enchantment. And this was a big deal. And I will say, when I was told that this was going to happen, that we were going to have an evening of enchantment, I didn't respond in the highest way, I'm sure. It really was just like, are you all crazy? We can't do this. But needless to say, it was something that Swamiji wanted us to do, and so everybody was going to rally behind it. So the day of our rehearsal in the space, at 5 o'clock, the place stopped. And we'd only gotten through the first act in rehearsal. Everybody put down their hammers. The lights went out. Everybody switched out of their costumes. And everybody walked out the door just very quietly to go to the evening of enchantment setup, because that was what was going to happen that night. You can imagine how I was flabbergasted. There was no conversation. There was nothing. It was just, everything just shut down. It didn't matter what I felt. It didn't matter what I thought. That was what was happening. And I went home that night and I took a little nap, and I dreamt I was in an airplane that was crashing. And my whole consciousness was so shaken by this whole experience. But it was something that like I said, I had no control over it. I had to just go through it. We all had to go through it. And that evening of performance was just fine. I talked everybody through the second and the third act right before they went on stage, and there was some stress. Some people were pretty stressed out. I didn't see them the next year for the play, but it was somewhat successful. We didn't have a lot of people from Ananda because they were all exhausted in the audience. So we had a few people from town because we hadn't done a lot of advertising. But anyway, it was fine. And I reflect on that to ask, what is it that Swami was trying to teach us? Well, he wanted us to raise our energy, which is essentially what he was asking of us. It was, I guess, on the spiritual path, it takes a lot of energy to find God. It really does. You have to be willing to just keep putting out the energy, whether it's through your kriyas or through your meditation, your hang sa, or coming to the purification ceremony, or whatever. Any of the techniques that we follow and that we practice are all designed to help us raise our energy. And as Master said in the reading, thoughts are universal. So they're out there floating around. Now, how do we keep them? The way that we can raise our consciousness is by raising our energy. And that's what's being demanded of us all the time. Depending on where your consciousness is going to determine the thoughts that you bring into your mind, into your life, the thoughts that bring you down. Thoughts that are positive bring the energy up the spine. Thoughts that are negative take the energy down the spine. And so when we were doing the play, we had no choice. We couldn't just sit there and complain about it. We had to just let it go and move forward, which is a big, big part of pushing through delusion and, as Master says, satanic forces. When you play sports, and they're team sports, you can't get out on the baseball field and yell at the person who maybe overthrew the ball. You have to just move forward. You have to just move on. That's what I love about team sports. You just can't sit there and focus on the negative. You just have to keep moving forward. And so that's one aspect that we have to really incorporate into our lives, is how do we raise our energy? How do we get it so that we're constantly drawing and magnetizing to us these higher states of consciousness? And when I was recently in Italy, I've been there for a while, and there was a conference with people from all over Ananda who were engaged in the arts. And if you're interested, by the way, next weekend after service, I'll be talking about it. But it was an extremely interesting conference. So I was going home from Rome, and I was with Asha Praver, Nayaswami Asha, and 7 other people. We were going through the airport. And there's a place you go through, you take the train, you get your luggage, you're traveling through the airport, you go through security, and then you come to this area. This was in Rome. You come to this area where there are thousands of shops. Well, that's an exaggeration, obviously, but there are a lot of shops, and they're selling candy, and they're selling jewelry, and they're selling high-priced bags, and there's people, things that you, duty-free stuff that you're buying, and it was packed. And there's all these people. You could feel this energy just kind of trying to suck the life out of you as you walk through it. And you get through the other side, and then you go into the terminal. But it was just such a maze of energy. And I just said, Asha, are we in hell? I mean, it was just so intense to walk after we had just been, of course, at this very uplifting few weeks in Assisi, and we walked through this. And it just goes to show how it's pulling on us all the time. And it can be extremely subtle. That was an extreme example. But The second thing I want you to remember is that the masters, all of the masters, are here for us. And I was in a situation where I've had a lot of loss in my life, a lot of grief. And I decided one weekend I was just going to wall myself off and just let it all go. I mean, you can't just suck it up when you have a lot of grief. You have to process it. And that, again, is what the teachings do for us, is that they help you to transmit the energy. You can't just pretend it's not there. But I decided to go for a weekend, just wall myself off, go into seclusion, and I took with me some exercises that some grief therapists had given to me. And in that weekend, I went into such a deep depression, trying to process what was going on. It was really bad, and I honestly didn't think I could get out of it. And the only thing I could do was get up and start to walk, and I walked towards a statue of Master. And I just sat there. That's all I could do. And on some level, I had to have opened up to him, because all of a sudden my consciousness was completely transformed. It was as if I hadn't even experienced that which I had just been through. And Swami, in Conversations with God, talked about Master and what quoted him in some things he said. He said, "I go through your souls every day. I seldom tell what I see, though, because those things are sacred." And Kriyananda continued, "The Master worked especially on raising our consciousness from within. If we are receptive to his vibrations, by helping us to change the direction of our thoughts and feelings. As someone once heard him say, 'If you shut me out, how can I come in?'" And Master said that beautiful statement of, "To those who think me near, I am near." So.
Yogananda wrote in a section of his super advanced course, number 1, "Where is your consciousness centered? In what slums is your soul roaming?" Only this sacred lesson is meant only for the most devoted yoga student who will untiringly and unceasingly seek God. Those are strong words. And I think what Yogananda is trying to tell us with this is that we need to be always present and alert and aware where our consciousness is. Where do we want our consciousness to be, and to always be trying to move forward in that direction. I came across this quote because I was preparing for the retreat that I'm doing in 2 weeks at the Forest Hermitage on how to live more super consciously. And last weekend, I gave a 3-hour workshop for our Ananda, Rhode Island family on this same topic. But I'm sharing this quote with you today because I think it's so very relevant to this topic this morning, and the question of, does Satan exist? And I don't know about you, but for me, the idea of a little man running around in a red suit wreaking havoc on the world hasn't really had a sense of relevance for me in this lifetime. But that image, that personification, is really a construct that we've inherited from Kali Yuga, when people needed physical forms to help them understand things, because ideas and consciousness was just too vague and abstract. And we're in a different time now. And so I think that's why that that image doesn't really fit for many of us. But God made this world out of consciousness, and everything in this world he created. And our reading says that Satan, that the satanic force, that evil is a particular current of consciousness. And as Devaki was talking about, and as I've said before, we're literally swimming in a sea of consciousness all around us with many different currents, some of which can help lift us up, many of which just sort of spin us out into the world and can distract us to no end, and some of which can pull us down. So how do we know these currents of consciousness? We know them by their results. We know them by how they make us feel. I had some years ago a dream, and in this dream I was walking down a staircase, and it was a rectangular spiral staircase. And I noticed in this dream, as I was going down the staircase, there were many other people on the staircase. It wasn't just me. There were some people who were walking up, some people who were stationary, some people who were walking down. And the further down I went on the staircase, the more uncomfortable I felt, the more the people I was passing looked mean, increasingly kind of almost like fiendish. I mean, it really, and I got to the point where I was so uncomfortable in this dream that I just turned around and started running right back up the stairs. Like Devaki, Alan and I were traveling recently, and perhaps because I was traveling and out of my routine, or perhaps again because I was working on this retreat on superconsciousness, I was really noticing how my environment was impacting my consciousness and how I felt. And I wanted to share two stories of this. We were visiting Alan's family in upstate New York, and Alan's brother wanted to take us to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Western Massachusetts. And I've never been a huge modern art fan, but I didn't want to deprive him of the joy of treating us to this experience. So we went along. And actually we took a tour with a tour guide that was very good. And some of the pieces on light and sound I really enjoyed. And then in the afternoon, we wandered into this room that had a bunch of artistically rendered heads that had been beaten, shot, mutilated, experienced any number of unpleasant things. And to make matters worse, the temperature in this room was freezing. It was literally a chilling experience.
Oh,
and really, all I wanted to do was to get out of that room as quickly as I could. I did not really feel to engage with the art that was there. Another experience, we were taking Amtrak up the coast toward Rhode Island, and I was working on the Sunday service that I gave last week in Rhode Island. And there was a family a few seats in front of us with some kids, some young children, who were probably watching some kids' video on a device without using headphones. And so all I could hear was this tune, this short melody repeated over and over and over and over again. And it was a very rajasic, very restless, very frenetic kind of melody. And then they increased the pitch a couple of half steps, which made it even more frenetic and restless. And then there was this like calliope playing in the background. For those of you who know it, it's the Baby Shark tune. If you don't know it, don't go look it up on YouTube. It's a terrible earworm. I'm still trying to get it out of my head. But I couldn't focus on thinking about Sunday service with something so rajasic playing in the background. And I'm not a huge earbud person, but I finally I put my earbuds in and I put Awaken to Superconsciousness, Swami's album, on my phone. And once I started listening to that, Sunday service was a piece of cake. So our environment really does affect our consciousness. And as I said, there are these currents that can pull us down, some of which are really quite evil, as we can sort of see playing out in the world around us today. And the good news is that we are only susceptible to those influences to the extent that we either invite them in and tune into them consciously, or to the extent that we have past experiences, vrittis, if you will, in our astral spine that can be awakened by those currents of consciousness. But we need to be humble and respect that those negative currents, that satanic force out there. Not in the sense of being afraid of it, but in the sense of realizing and knowing that until we are fully liberated, we can be susceptible to those influences. And as our reading says, that these currents can infect our thoughts even while it leads us to believe that our thoughts are purely our own. There's a story that Swami used to tell from when he was a monk at Mount Washington. This was toward the end of Yogananda's life, when the community that he created in Encinitas closed. There was kind of this movement to organize Yogananda's work. And it's not something that Yogananda really actively pushed himself, but that the disciples sort of all got very restless and agitated around. And a few of the disciples started getting very negative about, well, why hadn't things been organized sooner? And those people are mismanaging the work. And well, a guru really doesn't know how to do things like this. And Swami, being relatively new to the work and naive, didn't really sort of catch on to the negativity sort of surrounding this until he got what he called the best tongue lashing from Yogananda that he'd ever heard him give anyone. And what Swami realized was that in tuning into and heeding the negativity of his older brother disciples, he had let go of sort of initial good motives and had fallen into this kind of judgmental space that is contrary to love. And so I think it's a good lesson for all of us as devotees that we too are susceptible to these influences, right? And even when we think we're doing the right thing, if we get into it with the wrong spirit, we can just be, whipping up our egos and doing stuff and not and get caught in these negative currents of consciousness. And it can be very subtle, and it takes a lot of discrimination and awareness. And we all have our demons, so to speak, those habits that we get challenged with continually in our lives, or certain tests and challenges that we face. For example, the habit of gossiping, or the thought that I'm not good enough, or the unwillingness demon. Really, Divine Mother? I have to give a talk on why does Satan exist? Right? We all have this to some extent, and it's part of the human condition. So we need to acknowledge it. And sometimes I find it helpful even just to sort of call it out, as Jesus did. Get thee behind me, Satan. Call out the darkness for what it is, because it helps you to sort of gather your forces and move forward past it. Yogananda, in his commentaries on this Bible passage, said that the fact that Jesus was tested in this way sort of proves that he was both human and divine. That if he had been sort of perfectly made, divine, descended to earth, that he wouldn't have had to go through this. But that it was because he had those remnants of human experiences and the sense enjoyments that he had to, that before he could finally merge his consciousness into God, that he had to experience that. And Yogananda said that all prophets of God during their earthly incarnations were tested and had to overcome the human frailties of mortal embodiment in order to attain the final state of mergence in cosmic consciousness. So they go through this so that we know that we too can get through this. Right? So the good news is, in the end, Satan can't win. We all will rise above these challenges. We will all be victorious. And all of us someday will be one in that light. God bless you.
Tara's brave hills so quiet, the day I came there, not a green leaf stirred on the air, not a bird did proclaim ancient grandeur and fame, only ruins, faint memories declare. I marvel to think, how can greatness e'er die? How can song disperse in the sky? How can hopes and dreams fade? How the warrior's sharp blade become dust? Was victory a lie? I stood there and pondered the great deeds of man's past, how like clouds in the sunset no glory can last. Even we, as we labor to achieve some bright end, must accept after glory that the night will descend. I've dreamed a broad rainbow over thicket and thorn, over crags that called tarry, your hopes are forlorn. All too oft in my dreaming, courage turned to despair, till I learned that success is but the courage to dare. As I gazed and thought sadly of Tara's demise, suddenly I saw her walls rise, saw her long regal halls, heard her people's brave calls, as though time had doffed a disguise. And I knew in that moment the deeds that men do never die, each victory is true. Every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new. Every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new.
Thank you, Chaitanya. Absolutely beautiful.